Greetings, Headspaces. Viwe Joka, aka the brother from the ancient mother. You're watching another Headspace album review. Now, if this is your first time checking out the channel, we cover, discover, uncover the experience of hip-hop culture on the continent. Now, we're based in South Africa, but we're not limited to content. Yes, Mzansi. So now that the introductions are out of the way, album reviews, we talk about the latest, most interesting music that has come out from some of the most prolific, compelling, and just generally interesting rap acts and artists that the continent has to offer. We're going back home for this one to an artist whose profile supersedes the country, having famously been featured on one of the most popular YouTube musical exhibition shows. I don't even know what to call it. You know what I'm talking about, the one with all the different interesting colors. This MC is somebody who is, I feel, a blueprint for artists who want to navigate lanes that aren't necessarily properly and structurally acknowledged in their own homes. ByLwansta, as a rapper, teaches us that because you feel that the kind of art you make might be a little bit alienating to your immediate surroundings, it doesn't mean that there's absolutely no hope for you to, one, cultivate the interest, navigate around like-minded people, and basically grow your artistic economy from within to find ways to channel yourself out into the world because of just the wondrous marvel that is the internet. Now, I could speak for days about his hustle, but this is about the music. And the music is tranquil. The music is reflective. The music is a place for release and relaxation. ByLwansta, for the most part, makes the kind of music that is very narrative driven. He is very minimal as a rapper. No interesting bells and whistles. No effort to try and be layered in his lyricism. He's direct. And for those that like MCs who speak direct from a place that is pretty much conversational in its tone and in its style, you'll appreciate what he does. And clearly there are many who do. Now, he recently released a body of work which is again a testament of his creativity and his ingenuity, because he releases a project that is also a series. And by series I mean an actual dramatic exploration of different characters as they unfold, centered around this fictional character that he created and infuses his own personality in, called Spijonget. Now, I might be getting that wrong because the O is stylized in a way that kind of bends or begs another pronunciation. So if Lwansta's watching this and I'm saying it wrong, because I'll keep repeating that, but please correct me if it's not Spijonget. Now, Spijonget is a cartoon character, and I guess that also plays into the fact that ByLwansta is a visual artist. He's a designer, and he's utilizing the abilities that he has to give us a complete comprehensive package in a way that's imaginative. And I mean, I feel in the world right now it is super interesting to see artists who can use the podium of fantasy to help us explore the things that happen in reality. And I think it's really cool that a South African and generally an African rapper is putting us in a place that's more child friendly, putting us in a place that's more playful, putting us in a place that is intentionally divorced from any direct connections to references we may know, because rap today is so inundated with this brand that I'm drinking, these kind of clothes that I'm wearing, that it's almost just become about the capitalistic gain of how you access status. So for me, I feel like this project is refreshing because it's just an exploration of imagination that has nothing to do with status, but it's just an engagement with self using this character. Now, Spijonget's story unfolds in 3 parts, 3 chapters of 4 tracks each, which make about 12 songs in general, which is the whole project. Now, you can separate these 3 chapters in this way thematically. The first is kind of the concept of romance and love through Spijonget talking about his partner, his girl. The second is a personal exploration of his own inner turmoil and anguish and anxiety and insecurities. And lastly, the chapter that ends it all off is an affirmation of the greatest things that he can contribute, and as a result it is a story of aspiration, a story of success, how to define it, how to identify it. Now all of this makes for a complete human package. I mean, it's our yearning for companionship. It is also our need to engage with the pain that we're experiencing, and the stimuli outside that cause that. And lastly, it's us being able to say, what the fuck are we gonna do with ourselves in this world to make a valid point for our lives, to sustain ourselves somehow. And I love that because, again, ByLwansta's directness makes it a smooth narrative that's very easy to listen to. It bounces in between the narrative in a way that's playful. As a character, he's just an easygoing dude on the mic. So as a result, it makes for the kind of listening that's, you know, accessible to a very almost limitless array of people. It's a human story told in a way that doesn't try to pander to any kind of specific stylistics. It is in itself a rap album, but it's really a story told through rap. So it's more of the story than the rap that pushes it. I think that also tends to be some of the disadvantage. I mean, a lot of the first part is very minimal sonically speaking, to the point where it remains in the same place of these loopy, moody synths and this somber atmosphere, so much so that the four first songs like Stay Naked, The Homie, Kickstand and so forth sound like one extension, and maybe that was the point, but a little bit of diversity through the sonic texture would have added to the interest of the story in itself. But when you feel like you've been floating pretty much in the same space for too long, you do slip into boredom, and I think there's a risk of that because of the lack of musical variety in the first part. But I guess it makes up for it in the second chapter, which kind of starts off in a note that broadens itself sonically. Tracks like How About Now send us to this place which is more groovy, more atmospheric, speaks to more of a nighttime palette, as the first one was kind of in the morning, and it speaks to the struggle of waking up because, you know, your girl's with you and you'd rather just stay in bed. The second chapter is kind of now forcing yourself to face the world and realizing the compelling dangers that come with being in the world. And it's tracks like Nightcrawlers which obviously expose this, which is like a piety little interesting anecdotal story about him catching a ride to Park Station when it's really too late and running across shady individuals. So without any spoilers, it's a relatable story. It's one that teaches about responsibility or the lack thereof. And I think moving into the last chapter, it sets the musical tonality to a place that brings you back. Because you definitely could have slept in the first part, but it then rushes into this momentum that allows itself to be bigger, to be better, and then ultimately as it jumps into the last part, it just breathes in this world of pop influenced, a little bit of trap dynamics incorporated into a lot of the songs. So as a result, the theme of success in the last chapter is pushed through what I feel is too much of a formulaic channel. And what I mean by that is the production doesn't speak to anything you haven't heard before. There's too much of an eerie sense of familiarity to a point where it feels like a copy and paste approach. The writing, because of its minimalistic approach, and when you juxtapose that with a sonic texture which doesn't aspire to be anything beyond the typical, can make for a place where this project isn't filled with too much replay value. It's literally one of those things you can listen to once in a while because it doesn't have enough innovative pockets for new things to keep occurring as you listen to it. The story in and of itself is the bedrock of it, so every time you want to come back and reflect on certain themes and listen to Spijonget's character kind of put these things as a mirror reflection, or maybe just listening to the story as a story, that's pretty much the central function of this project, but it limits it because it doesn't really attempt to do anything musically spectacular, and it stays in this place where it sounds pretty average from a musical perspective. It's like anything anybody would have put out, sonically speaking. Therefore, I think ultimately the curse of Spijonget is ByLwansta's innovation transfers itself through too much of a basic formula. So ultimately it becomes at best, if you're talking from a musical dynamic perspective, and the story in and of itself is just goodwill, spirited human connection, and this is the ultimate thing you can truly appreciate about it. So let's go to the rating. Ultimately, factoring in everything I've said, I'm literally placing this on the average spectrum. It's a 5 out of 10 for me because I think it would have really packed a punch, one, if ByLwansta incorporated other artists to become additional characters in the Spijonget story, so that it becomes as interesting as an actual visual series, where you're not just listening to the same voice tell everything from its perspective and from everybody else's. It's a more dramatic theatrical dimension, so I think that would have helped a lot. I mean, shit, he could have also adopted different voices to be, for instance, the perspective of the girl, to be the perspective of the different dynamics. I mean, he tries this when he kind of speaks as the Uber driver and as Spijonget in the Uber, and I think it is that potential that could have been explored more, but it stays in this one dimension where it's one person's story in their own heads, and that kind of loses the attention a little bit. And I think the second thing that he could have done is he could have bathed the story in a sonic texture that attempts to move with every emotional dip and fluctuation, instead of just kind of writing a story to a soundtrack which is pretty much steady and doesn't go into places outside of its railing. So for me, a 5 out of 10, but it's average in the way you can appreciate, and I mean that in a sincere tone. It is an effort, a creative effort, and undone hardly, you know, I don't think there's any other artist in Africa that has attempted to do something like this. Therefore, I feel applying the baby steps model really is relevant here, because when trying out new things, it's the engagement with the audience that teaches you what works and what doesn't. And I hope that this review can contribute to a brilliant artist like ByLwansta figuring out how to kind of improve what is essentially a very dope idea. I hope this is not the last of the adventures of Spijonget. Like I said, it's a very compelling idea, but it kind of just falls short because the production traps it in the same zone that doesn't feel too exciting. It doesn't draw you towards new notes, new synths, new effects. It's kind of too much in the safe pocket. My name is VJ, the brother from the ancient mother. Check you out later.